27 February 2022, Ukraine submitted an application instituting proceedings against the Russian Federation under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, to which I shall refer as the Genocide Convention, accompanied by a request for the indication of provisional measures. On 16 March 2022, the court delivered its order on provisional measures in the case concerning allegations of genocide under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Ukraine versus Russian Federation. The case was instituted by Ukraine on 26 February 2022, invoking Article 9 of the Genocide Convention as the basis for the court's jurisdiction. Ukraine's claims centered on the initiation by the Russian Federation of, here I quote from Ukraine's application, a, quote, special military operation, close quote, against Ukraine with the express purpose of preventing and punishing purported acts of genocide that have no basis in fact, end of quote. The Russian Federation did not appear at the oral proceedings on the request for the indication of provisional measures, which opened on 7 March 2022. However, shortly after the closure of the hearing, the ambassador of the Russian Federation to the Kingdom of the Netherlands communicated to the court a document setting out, I quote, the position of the Russian Federation regarding the lack of jurisdiction of the court in the case, end of quote. In its order, the court found that it had jurisdiction prima facie to entertain the case. It noted in this regard that the elements presented to it were sufficient at that stage to establish on a prima facie basis the existence of a dispute between the parties relating to the interpretation, application, or fulfillment of the Genocide Convention as required under Article 9 thereof. The court then turned to the question of the plausibility of the rights whose protection was sought. It noted that Ukraine stated that it sought provisional measures to protect its rights, I quote, not to be subject to a false claim of genocide, end of quote, and, I quote, not to be subjected to another state's military operations on its territory based on a brazen abuse of Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, end of quote. The court observed that in accordance with Article 1 of the Convention, all states parties thereto have undertaken to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. While Article 1 does not specify the kinds of measures that may be taken to fulfill this obligation, the contracting parties must implement this obligation in good faith, taking into account other parts of the Convention. In particular, the court emphasized that, in discharging its duty to prevent genocide, every state may only act within the limits permitted by international law. The acts undertaken by contracting parties to prevent and to punish genocide must be in conformity with the spirit and aims of the United Nations, as set out in Article 1 of the United Nations Charter, establishing the overriding purpose of the organization to maintain and promote international peace and security. Under these circumstances, the court concluded that Ukraine had a plausible right not to be subjected to military operations by the Russian Federation for the purpose of preventing and punishing an alleged genocide in the territory of Ukraine. Further, the court concluded that a link existed between the right of Ukraine that it had found to be plausible and the requested provisional measures. The court also concluded that the right of Ukraine that it had found to be plausible was of such a nature that prejudice to that right was capable of causing irreparable harm, and that there was urgency. It observed that any military operation, in particular one on the scale of that carried out by the Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine, inevitably causes loss of life, mental and bodily harm, and damage to property and to the environment. In this regard, the court took note in particular of the resolution adopted by the General Assembly on 2 March 2022 at its 11th emergency special session. In light of the above considerations, the court found that the conditions for it to indicate provisional measures were met. It ordered the Russian Federation to immediately suspend military operations that it had commenced on 24 February 2022 in the territory of Ukraine, and to ensure that any military or irregular armed units which may be directed or supported by it, as well as any organization or persons which may be subject to its control or direction, take no steps in furtherance of the said military operations. The court also called upon both parties to refrain from any action which may aggravate or extend the dispute or make it more difficult to resolve.
Observe good faith and justice toward all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. The International Court of Justice epitomizes this very ideal. It is a cornerstone and a beacon of the United Nations system. It manifests the principles and goals we strive for in these halls: the rule of law, justice, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Our world today is deeply polarized and, unfortunately, torn by more and more interlocked crises. In such hard times, it is a rules-based system and the international legal order that can provide us with a solid basis to overcome instability, unpredictability, strife, and injustice. The International Court of Justice represents the best of multilateralism. The ICJ is there for all of us to resolve our disputes and to provide legal guidance and clarity when advice is sought for. Even when there are differences of opinion, and they often are, the judges of the ICJ are able to lead by example and agree to disagree in a professional and collegial manner. But when they come forward with a verdict, that is solid knowledge, science, and jurisprudence. It is no surprise that the docket of the court has been full in recent years, and there has been a clear upswing in the number of cases being deliberated by court. For our global community, it is more crucial than ever before to send a clear message that international law must be respected. Strong legal institutions like the ICJ are a critical component of making our world much more just and peaceful, as it was envisaged by the founders of the United Nations. Therefore, we must all uphold and honor the court's decisions, judgments, and guidance, without exception. And we should all support the International Court of Justice and the ideas for which it stands. If we do not maintain justice, justice will not maintain us.
That's all in this bulletin. Have a good day. Please do subscribe this channel. It would be a great help to us. And please do not forget to press the bell icon for regular updates.